So, this happened a few years ago, when I was still in college. I was working on my thesis, and things were getting really stressful. I needed a break, you know? I needed some fresh air, some peace and quiet. My roommate, Jim, suggested we go camping. I thought, why not? So, we packed up his old beat-up Jeep and headed out to the woods. The place wasn't too far from campus, a couple of hours' drive. Jim said he knew a good spot, an old cabin in the woods that he used to go to with his dad when he was a kid. He figured it would be the perfect getaway. The old cabin was nestled deep in the woods, right by a clear creek. It looked abandoned, kind of creepy, but in a good way, you know? The kind of creepy you find romantic and adventurous. The windows were boarded up, and vines were crawling all over the walls. It looked like it hadn't been touched in years. Jim told me how he used to spend weekends there with his dad, fishing and hiking. He even showed me some old photos of his dad sitting on the porch of the cabin, smiling. It was a nice memory, a good thing to think about, looking at the old photos of his dad. I started feeling a little sentimental about it, even though I had just met Jim a few months back. We decided to stay for the weekend. We spent the first day exploring the woods, hiking around the creek. In the evening, we lit a fire in the cabin's fireplace. We huddled around it, sharing stories and making jokes. Jim even found a dusty old guitar in the attic. He started playing, and it was fun, you know? We were having a good time. That night, I woke up to a sound. It was a tapping noise, like someone was knocking on the ceiling. It was a strange noise. I got up and checked outside. Nothing. There was no one there. I figured it must be just branches hitting against the cabin in the wind. Whatever it was, it didn't sound very serious. So I went back to bed. But the tapping continued. It started to get on my nerves, especially when I started hearing footsteps outside the cabin. There was nobody there last time I checked though. I didn't want to worry Jim, so I waited for him to wake up. When the sun started to peek through the blinds, I finally woke him up. He was a deep sleeper, so it took him a few minutes to get up. We both decided that it was just the wind playing tricks on us. Or maybe rats, we thought. Or squirrels. We had all these thoughts going through our minds. It seemed like a plausible explanation. Later that morning, we were heading back to the Jeep for some groceries when we saw him. A man. He was standing not too far from the cabin. He was skinny, pale with long, dark dirty hair. He was wearing a faded denim jacket and dirty jeans. He had one of those really sad looks, you know, like he was holding back tears. We thought he might be in trouble, so we walked up to him. He didn't move. He looked like he was in a trance. He just stared blankly at the front of the cabin. He wasn't exactly looking at us. He seemed to be focused on something inside the cabin. We said hello, trying to make eye contact, but he didn't respond. Then, I realized he was staring through the window that was boarded up, you know? There wasn't a single opening in the window. We both looked back at the man. He glanced at us for a moment, and then continued to stare through the window. It was weird, really weird. There was a look in his eyes, like he could see something in there, something we couldn't see. He seemed to be trying to get our attention to something inside the cabin. Jim, he was always a little more bold, just went ahead and asked him if he was okay. The skinny dude, he didn't move. He didn't react at all. Jim asked him again, this time louder, if he needed any help. But again, nothing. He just continued to stare through the boarded-up window. It was starting to get creepy then. Jim got a little scared and took a step back. I wasn't fully into getting into this, but I stayed right there to see what was going on. I felt something was definitely strange, and I didn't like it. We decided to just go back to the cabin. After we entered, we locked the door. We both kind of agreed. We wanted to get back to campus as soon as possible. I started packing my stuff, but Jim, he was still feeling a little anxious. He grabbed his shotgun off the wall and went back to the window. It was a vintage double-barreled shotgun that his family had owned for generations. He was a pretty good aim, but I didn't think he was actually serious about using it. He just seemed to be trying to calm down. He was still looking at the window with the boarded-up glass. He was whispering about the weird look that guy had and how this was getting creepier by the minute. Suddenly, the window started to break. It didn't shatter into a million pieces. It started to break from inside. It looked like someone was pushing against the window from the inside. Jim tried to aim at the window, but the board started falling apart from the inside. We could hear the sound of things falling over, and a loud bumping inside the cabin. We both were afraid to see what was happening inside. Then we saw it. We saw a pair of hands pushing through the broken window. Just a pair of hands, pale as snow, pushing through the wood. The hands moved towards the shotgun, and Jim, he was freaking out. He jumped back and fired. The sound was massive. The place was filled with smoke. We both screamed. Then, silence. I didn't even know what had happened after the smoke. I don't even remember if I could even breathe. It was such a crazy moment. The smoke slowly started to clear, and we saw a figure fall through the hole in the window. It was the skinny guy, now lying on the floor, his face covered in blood. I don't remember much after that. We got out of the cabin, called the cops, and left. It took a while for the police to reach us, but in the end, everything was handled. We were told it was a man with mental health issues, trying to break into the cabin. He had been living in the woods. The police said he was dangerous and had a history of violence, so they locked him up. Jim and I never went back to that cabin. It was good that the whole thing was eventually cleared, but it was a really weird experience. I mean, it was creepy, but it was also a little sad. It was like that dude was just trying to find something inside that cabin. Some kind of comfort, maybe. Maybe he thought he was looking for something lost. Maybe he was looking for a ghost. It's still a little creepy to think about, though. I'm not sure what Jim's dad would have thought about all of this. He talked about the cabin so many times, and how much he loved it. He talked about how it was special to him. He made it sound like a sacred place. So, the whole thing felt a little wrong, you know? It wasn't the calm and peaceful getaway he dreamed of. I don't know what he would have thought about what happened that night. I don't think he would have been happy, and I don't think I ever would be either. It took me a long time to process what happened there. It felt like a nightmare. You know, it took me a while to get everything back to normal. I still go to the woods sometimes, but never to that place. It's not that I'm scared, it's just that it doesn't feel comfortable anymore. It's hard to ignore the sound of footsteps behind me, or a tapping on the roof, or the feeling that I'm being watched. I don't know who he was looking for inside the cabin, but maybe, just maybe, he was looking for someone like me.